The year is 1907. A skinny 18-year-old from Austria walks into the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, portfolio in hand, convinced he is about to become one of the greatest painters who ever lived. His name is Adolf Hitler, and he is about to be rejected. But what if he wasn't? What if the admissions board looked at his watercolors and said yes? What if one single decision by a handful of art professors changed the entire course of human history? We are talking about a world where the deadliest war in human history never happens, where 60 million people don't die, where Europe looks completely unrecognizable from the one we know today. This is the butterfly effect on the most insane scale imaginable. Let's break it down. First, why did he actually get rejected? Hitler applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts twice, 1907 and 1908. Both times rejected. The board said his work showed technical skill but lacked creativity. Ironically, they suggested he might be better suited for architecture. The problem was, he didn't have the academic qualifications to get into architecture school either, so he ended up homeless, living in a shelter in Vienna, selling postcards of his paintings just to eat. And it was during those bitter, humiliating years on the streets of Vienna that Hitler's worldview began to rot. He became obsessed with anti-Semitic newspapers. He blamed Jewish people for his failures. He absorbed every piece of far-right propaganda he could find. The rejection didn't create a monster overnight, but it absolutely created the conditions for one. So what happens if that never occurs? If accepted in 1907, Hitler spends the next 4 years studying painting in Vienna. He is surrounded by other artists, intellectuals, and creative thinkers. His social circle completely changes. Instead of homeless shelters and hate pamphlets, he is in studios and galleries and cafes debating art theory. Historians who have studied his actual paintings say he had genuine technical ability. His architectural watercolors were detailed and precise. He likely would have graduated, found modest success, and spent his life painting buildings and landscapes in Vienna or Munich. He probably never gets rich. He probably never gets famous. He is just another early 20th century European painter whose work occasionally sells at small galleries. And that is it. That is the whole story for Adolf Hitler. Now here is where it gets insane. What happens to Germany? World War I still happens. That has nothing to do with Hitler. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the alliance system, the arms race, all of that still unfolds exactly the same way. Germany still loses. The Treaty of Versailles still humiliates the German people. The economy still collapses. The conditions that created the Nazi Party still exist. The anger, the poverty, the desperation, it is all still there. But here is the critical difference. Hitler is not there to channel it. The Nazi Party exists without Hitler. It was founded before he joined it. But without Hitler's obsessive energy, his terrifying gift for public speaking, and his absolute ruthlessness, it almost certainly stays a fringe movement, a footnote. One of dozens of radical political parties that popped up in Weimar Germany and disappeared just as fast. So who fills the vacuum? This is where historians genuinely disagree. Germany in the late 1920s is a powder keg looking for a spark. If Hitler never lights it, someone else might. There were other radical nationalist figures circling at the time, but none of them had Hitler's specific combination of charisma, paranoia, and total lack of moral limits. The most likely scenario, according to many historians, is that the Weimar Republic, Germany's fragile democracy, actually survives. It was hanging by a thread, but it was hanging. Without Hitler systematically dismantling it from the inside, it probably stabilizes sometime in the early 1930s as the global economy begins recovering from the Great Depression. Germany becomes a normal European democracy. Struggling, imperfect, but functional. World War II. Does it happen at all? Almost certainly not in any form we would recognize. No Nazi party in power means no rearmament of Germany, no annexation of Austria, no invasion of Poland. The entire chain of events that triggered the Second World War simply does not exist. Now, could some other conflict have broken out in Europe during the 1930s and 40s? Possibly. Tensions between European powers did not disappear just because of Hitler. But a continent-spanning war of extermination? Almost impossible without the specific ideology and machine Hitler built. Now we need to talk about the most important part of this conversation. 6 million Jewish people were murdered in the Holocaust, along with millions of Roma, disabled people, political prisoners, and others. The Holocaust was not an inevitable product of history. It was the direct result of a specific ideology, implemented by a specific regime, led by a specific person. No Hitler in power almost certainly means no Holocaust. Full stop. This is the part of this what if that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. We are not just talking about redrawing political maps. We are talking about millions of human beings who get to live their lives, raise families, change the world in ways we will never know. Almost everything in the rest of the 20th century changes too. The Cold War might not happen the way we know it. The Soviet Union's rise to superpower status was massively accelerated by World War II. Without that war, Stalin's USSR is still dangerous, but far less dominant on the world stage. The State of Israel might not exist. It was founded in 1948 largely in response to the Holocaust. Jewish communities in Europe, never having been decimated, might have continued building lives there instead. Nuclear weapons might have been developed much later. The Manhattan Project was driven almost entirely by fear of Nazi Germany getting the bomb first. No Nazi Germany, no desperate race to build it. The entire second half of the 20th century looks completely unrecognizable. And Hitler himself, what is he doing through all of this? He is an old man somewhere in Vienna or Munich. Probably bitter that he never got famous. Probably still holding some ugly views. But he is just a person. Harmless. Unknown. There is actually a small collection of his paintings that survived. They sell at auction occasionally. They are competent. Architectural. A little cold. Nothing special. Somewhere in an alternate timeline there are probably hundreds more, hanging in small apartments and minor galleries across Central Europe, painted by a man nobody ever heard of. Here's the thing about history. It does not take a massive force to change everything. Sometimes it takes one admissions board, one moment, one yes instead of a no. The entire 20th century, the deadliest in human history, potentially pivots on whether a group of professors in Vienna thought a teenager's portfolio was good enough. That should terrify you. And it should also give you hope. Because if history can bend that dramatically toward darkness because of one small decision, it can bend just as dramatically toward light. One decision. 60 million lives. Think about that. If you made it this far in the video, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. See you guys in the next one.